Hello and welcome to everyone. This is our fourth podcast for the winter season, and we are in 2020. Isn't that hard to say? I'm still not used to that. Joining us today is Dr. Karen Hickman, who I want to get your title right. So I've gotten your business card. You are the new director of the Environmental Science Program, which is an undergraduate program here at OSU.
I am.
And you've been here for a long time at OSU. You've been in different roles. So that's why I had to make sure your title was...
I've been involved in the environmental science program through plant and soil sciences, natural resource ecology and management, and so now I have the opportunity to serve as the director.
That's so exciting.
It is exciting.
So tell us a little bit, because this is a program area, not necessarily a department.
Correct.
Let's talk about what that means.
So a program in the Ferguson College of Agriculture.
Yes, we have a name,
is basically a program that is multidisciplinary.
Okay.
So we have departments, right? So animal science, agricultural economics, natural resource ecology and management, and others. And they are going to have faculty within that department that do teaching, research, and extension. A program that's multidisciplinary doesn't really have faculty that are assigned to the director, right? I'm the director. Instead, they have faculty that come from all the different departments and help contribute to the environmental science program.
Okay.
So truly multidisciplinary, team effort, and is guided by a steering committee made up of faculty from many of the departments.
Okay, so that's pretty exciting, because basically these undergraduate students are getting access to even more faculty. I mean, we regardless if we're in a department, we have access to faculty, but they really are being taught by a diverse group.
And so they can, so we have three options in the program. So we have, or in the major of environmental science, so we have water resources, natural resources, and then environmental policy.
Okay.
And so it's really a cool opportunity for the students to be able to go meet with a faculty member that specializes in what they're interested in within natural resources or within water, be it water quality, be it hydrology, and then with policy, be it the Environmental Protection Act, economics associated with it, health and safety. So they can access all these different faculty and just reap the benefit from that interaction.
That's fascinating. How did this program come to be? Why was this chosen to be a special program?
So, I'm going to say 3 decades ago or so, in the 90s, the program was developed, and it basically came about by, things are faculty driven. Many times in our college. And so there were some faculty that saw a need and a niche really for environmental science as a degree program, because they had students that weren't production ag, they weren't forestry, they weren't truly ag economics.
Right.
And so, but they were very interested in the environment within agriculture. And so some faculty got together. It was supported, I think Dr. David Lewis was the first director, really supported by Ed Miller, who was at that time, I don't know if he was department head, but ended up becoming the associate dean. And so in the college, and so was supported that way. And it's moved through various program directors since then. And so,
Okay. And so you've got a new space now on the third floor, too.
Yes.
Where was it originally kind of housed?
Right. So that's kind of a, I'll go with a short, long story.
Okay.
And so last year, a year and a half ago, in the fall of 18, I guess, we had an external review. So Dr. Brian Carter had been the director. He was the director. He was a faculty member in plant and soil sciences. He retired in that August, and I became the interim environmental science program director, and had the opportunity to put together an external review. And so we had faculty from other land-grant institutions come in, faculty from state agencies and private companies, corporations, came in and really reviewed our program really critically and gave us a lot of constructive criticism that made us realize that we really need to be identifiable in a space because the students didn't really feel as though they had a space because it was just a department or a program director's office and their computer lab. And so now, thanks to Plant and Soil Sciences, they opened up a space for us. Dr. Callery and the college and the division provided funding to renovate that. And it's just gone great guns. So it's really fun.
That's excellent. So, I mean, I kind of thought it was new because I've only been here 5 years, so I wasn't aware of it being somewhere else and stuff. So it definitely gives you more of a face, more of a presence, having those office spaces there.
I mean, we were really successful without that face. Because we had, 60 students as majors, right? So
that's bigger than some departments.
Correct.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, we don't like to tout that, but we do. And so now I think we're growing a bit, and the goal is to really grow even further.
That's exciting.
So it's really exciting.
So, what are these students going on to do with the career in this?
So. These are some amazing students. So we have a large number of students who are honor students, active in organizations, really active in internships or summer jobs associated with the field. And so this past year, all of the students that graduated in May, and actually December, have positions either in graduate school or in the workforce. And so we have some that work for federal agencies, the USGS, U.S. Geological Service or Survey, the U.S. Forest Service. I have one that's going to go to One Oak and work. Some with the Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality.
Because there's we're in an oil state, and so many of these oil companies are also responsible for cleaning up the land or restoring it after,
or abiding by regulations that they have, and they want to make sure that they do that in a responsible way.
And that can either be out there, like knowing the plants and what's proper land management,
or the soil,
or the legality of it, I guess, too.
Exactly.
Right? So what they can and can't do.
And so I had actually a student who got a position with Amazon, moved to Georgia. Yeah, she's in the environmental kind of safety. I know, right? So she moved to Georgia in her position. So some have gone to graduate school. They've actually gone on. We had one student this past year who went on to the environmental science graduate program that's here at Oklahoma State.
Wow. It's so impressive, and it really is neat. And I know OSU is trying to do this, kind of get out of those silos of you're in this department, right? Because there's so much crossover. I mean, I know that with horticulture. I mean, is it horticulture or is it when we talk about water?
Right.
We work a lot with NREM, natural resource and
ecology
and management. Yes, let me get that title right. Because there is that crossover and plant and soil science. I mean. It's a huge thing.
So we have members of our steering committee from entomology and plant path.
Okay.
From Ag Econ, NREM, someone in Ag Education, Communication, and Leadership, and Animal Science. Wow. So it's
the gamut.
It's the gamut.
So you actually teach in this program?
Yes. Okay. So I have the opportunity to teach the capstone classes, I guess.
Okay.
So that I teach all the senior students in a capstone, and that basically means that they have a real world problem, environmental science problem, that they have to address and come up with solutions for.
Can you give us an example of what a problem would be?
So one of them was in the Cowboy Journal this past December, and it was the yellow floating heart that was at Lake Carl Blackwell. Yeah. Right?
That used to be a water plant that I always liked, and now I know it's a bad
We know
thing.
It's an invasive now. There you go.
But that was, 30 years ago.
Exactly. We had students work with the Environmental Science Graduate Program and Dr. Scott Stooley, and he working on water-based management plans in the Blue River watershed. It runs the gamut. Had some that did a USGS project. One of them, they went out and worked at the dairy, the new Ferguson dairy, and mapped the lagoon,
the runoff, and stuff?
or just the lagoon, to find out the kind of the lifespan and potential for that lagoon. And so those are some that went on last year, and then this year we just, again, a wide variety.
Wow.
Sustainability, recycling within the college and DASNR. So, yeah.
So do you guys have a student club that these
We
kids,
do.
Okay, what is that student club?
It's called the Environmental Science Club.
Okay.
And it's made up of students that are within the environmental science program, but also outside of it. So it's, again, pretty campus-wide. And they are they're going great guns. And in fact, I'll give a shout out to Mrs. Hargis. Mrs. Hargis, I've got to get a...
No, yeah, go ahead.
So Mrs. Hargis, we contacted her somehow, the students did, and one of the things that the students are doing for a fundraiser are selling reusable metal straws, right? And so we just sold some to Mrs. Hargis.
Oh,
so yeah, $3. We
And they come with a brush, right?
And they come with a
Yeah.
brush.
So
That's a swivel brush that apparently is a really cool brush.
Okay.
So yeah.
Because that's always how do you clean that straw, right?
Yeah. And then
And they're printed with OSU on
Oklahoma
it.
State University. Yeah.
Okay.
And then we also have.
That's a great little stocking stuffer.
I know, for next year or for Easter.
Easter,
right?
Yeah, there we go.
And then they also, we're so proud of this. It's a tote bag that whenever I take it to the grocery store, they always comment on, that's like one of the best arranged or designed bags ever. Because it says, it's got a little plastic bag outline, plastic, and
Right.
it says plastic or planet, and then it's got a little turtle,
Sea turtle,
sea turtle
right.
in there, which, are harmed by those plastics. And so these are for sale through the Environmental Science Club.
Okay.
Yeah, and then
Do you know what the prices are on that?
so $3 for the straw.
Okay.
And then the bag is
That's the price of a drink, a fountain drink.
right, and you can just take it back,
Yeah.
And the bags are $10.
Okay.
And then they have T-shirts also, and so they went all out this year. And then the T-shirts are, the basically the globe, and then it says "One Earth, One Chance."
Okay.
OSU Environmental Science Club.
Hold that up
Oh,
so
yeah.
everybody
So there
can
you
see
go.
that. Yeah, one
Right.
Earth, one chance.
Yeah, and I don't want to be quoted on the price of this because
Okay.
I'm an irresponsible club advisor, and I don't pay attention.
So is that posted on their website?
They don't. The
Or-
club is in the process, so
Okay.
it's not on there.
Can
but
they
you can
email the
contact
program?
Me. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So email the
Email
program
me.
if people
We
want
can-
to get
absolutely.
those, and they could probably mail them to them or something
We
like
can.
that. So,
Or
excellent.
deliver.
Okay. All right.
So, yeah.
Well, we're statewide, so you never know
We
who's
can-
going to be
well,
listening.
exactly.
International.
We're good. We're so excited. So the club is just getting out there and trying to really work hard to promote the program, but then also where to get jobs, where to search for jobs, what training they need, and
Right.
so. This weekend, we actually have the Oklahoma Conservation Commission coming to campus to host a 2-day training for the Blue Thumb program.
Oh, yeah,
So
I'm
the
familiar
Blue
with it.
Thumb, the
Yeah,
water
yeah.
sampling program, and so 30 students have signed up to be trained.
excellent.
And they'll have that, it's a value added to their resume, but then that's one of the club activities.
Is that a national program?
I think it's a national
so
program.
once they're trained, wherever they go, they can still
Correct.
participate in that.
And so the club actually samples every month below Boomer Lake on the creek.
Okay, so
there,
we're
and
there.
samples the water quality, and then those data go to Oklahoma Conservation Commission.
Okay. Yeah, and for people who aren't familiar with the Blue Thumb Project, basically that is you kind of are assigned or you pick a nearby creek or stream that you monitor and you kind of adopt that.
Right.
It's like adopt a highway, but you
Yeah.
kind of adopt that creek and kind of make sure that it's being monitored and the levels aren't getting.
You're really checking. You're testing the water quality, dissolved oxygen, other pH, etc., turbidity. But then also every once in a while you'll collect fish and the macroinvertebrates that are in the stream or the creek, and those data just really get used by the Conservation Commission to help guide and direct to see if there's any problems that might be upstream,
Yeah.
non-point source pollutions or point source.
And if there's individuals that want to get involved in that, usually they have a group that you can join nearby. I know when I worked out in El Reno, there was a big group out there and
Yeah.
stuff. So, yeah, there's a lot of creeks and streams to monitor.
In Oklahoma especially, absolutely.
Definitely. Well, that's very
I
exciting.
know, it's really cool.
So
So-
do your students also have to do an internship? Is that part of their?
Right. That's one of the discussion points for the the steering committee right now.
Okay.
And we kind of realized that for students to get a job, they really need that internship or that summer job in the field. And so that's one of the things we're going to try to implement is within the next couple of years is a change to the curriculum requiring that internship.
Okay.
But we have, and there's a document that we've produced through the students, through the faculty, that's environmental science job and internship resources.
Oh, okay.
And so in the past, I would just try to remember what websites for them to go to. And now we have a whole list.
Okay.
And basically, someone from our environmental science program has gotten a position through one of these sources.
Oh, excellent.
So it's really exciting to see where all they go.
So, and that's another thing. If you're thinking about, I don't know where I fit in which department, if you're interested or looking at this program, they could look at some of those jobs to see if those jobs spark their interest.
Right, absolutely. And then we also have a list of potential careers. And so if they go to those websites and they have to type in a specific job that they're searching for, we've got a whole list of potential titles that they could search for to find out what you really need to have to be able to get that position. So it's,
Well, it sounds like a very flexible program to fit the students' interest within environmental science. So,
we try to always make sure that the students are getting what they need. We have a lot of students that do various minors or double majors, and so they're really getting a good breadth, I think. You can find the listings of these
in the comments on Facebook.
In the comments on Facebook. Where we go.
Got to use full sentences. We don't. It made sense when you said it out loud. Okay, so back to the regularly scheduled program. So, do you know of any other programs that are being discussed that might be, kind of taken away from the silo aspect of departments? Are you privy to any of that, or?
So when you programs,
I mean, like the environmental science. Is there any sort of areas like regenerative ag that might be a thing? Or
I think
something?
that. Right now, one of our goals, one of my goals is to, as the new director, is to go out and communicate with all the department heads within the college and see what they need. So I know that for ag in the classroom, for instance, is there a possibility that we could provide them with some course material that might be able to benefit their program and really increase the knowledge associated with environmental science as it is situated in agriculture.
Okay. Very good. Very good. All right. So anything else you want to talk about this program? Or
I'm really excited about the program, and I think that if anyone has, if there's teachers, parents, high school students that are interested in the program or want to know more about it, please contact me, and we are more than happy to talk with them.
Okay, and of course they can go to your website.
Correct.
Is it es.okstate.edu?
That is it today.
Okay. Is it changing?
Well, we may. That's my understanding. It could be changing.
So Google environmental science OK State, and you'll find it that way, definitely, regardless of the website.
Right.
So, but all of this information that you've mentioned is on there. You guys have a great website, and I'm sure if anybody's up in Stillwater and wants to come out and check out your new facilities on the third floor,
come by.
You're more than happy. There's always students, it seems like, just kind of hanging out. I know they're not hanging out, but it looks like a kind of a chill place for those students to enjoy each other.
We like to have a welcoming environment, and then we also want to, I'm always wanting to make sure the students are fed. so we have snacks and everything available for them. And then
don't let the faculty know that. You might.
So we're good.
Very good, very good. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about why you were selected as program director for this. Because what is your background?
So
you've been in a few other departments, as you mentioned.
I have
Plant
been.
and Soil Science and NREM.
Mm-hmm. And so when I came to Oklahoma State, and I came in over 15 years ago. I'm thinking, it was Dr. Jeff Hattie. He's the one who said, you really need to get involved in the environmental science program.
I had him in class.
In soil science.
In soil science.
And so he was the director. I don't think he was the director right then, but he became the director soon thereafter. And he encouraged me. I advised some students. And then I had some students that were environmental science students that got WINTS research awards and did projects with me. And then I had some that were environmental science students who did their honors thesis with me and published, right? So they published their thesis.
Excellent.
And it was just amazing students. And then, so I worked with Jeff Hattie on that. I worked with Dr. Carter on it, and just became very interested in the program. And when the opportunity came about for the director to be filled, I applied.
You were like, I want to work with more of those students.
Yeah.
And you've been invested in the students for a while. I mean, you have been a part of the undergraduate programs, doing a lot of different things. So, but your background. I mean, what is your background?
So my background.
I know, but I'm teasing here.
So I would be not classified as a true environmental scientist. But I feel as though my field is within environmental science.
Okay.
It's kind of a little
I don't think anybody would argue it.
Yeah, right. So I am actually a grassland ecologist. Okay. So I got my PhD at K-State and have worked in the tall grass prairie and the mixed grass prairie and the short grass prairie throughout my career, looking at effects of management practices on the plant community. So I'm really into those, the native plants and how
which are all the buzz right now.
All the buzz, yes. All those pollinator species.
Yes.
And so I worked with, fire and herbicide and grazing and invasive species. And so kind of worked in that realm. And it kind of fits in the environmental science natural resources component.
Absolutely. So how did you get interested in invasive species?
How did I get
before they were popular?
Oh my gosh! So I teach an ecology of invasive species course, and I still get that opportunity, even being director.
That's awesome.
So I got to keep that.
That's your original passion.
That's why I like it.
How do you teach that? Is really neat.
So I always give credit to my mother for me becoming interested in invasive species. And I tell this story in my class at the beginning of the semester. So my mother, I was raised in Alva. And we would move to the farm in the summertime because it was in a different school district and my father wanted us to go to Alva. So we would move to the farm when he was working in the fields and we ended up working in the fields. And my mother, they had 3 little girls, and the little girls, me included, liked to run around barefooted. And there were
stepped on a sandburr.
Goat heads. Okay. And those stickers were everywhere. And so every summer, she would get the hoe and she would roll up, and we had a little red wagon that my older sister and I would take the pitchfork and we would put him in the little red wagon. And then we could haul them over to back then you burned uncontrollably. It was horrible. Anyway, so we would put them by the burn pit and wait for them to dry up a little bit. And then we got to burn them. Hence my interest in prescribed fire also. So today, my sister and her husband and family live on the farm. And there are no stickers.
Wow.
Right. So Anyway, so that's
you
one.
eradicated. That was your first program.
And then that's one. And then there was an invasive grass that I saw that I asked my father about, and that was old world blue stems.
Okay.
And that was in the early '90s.
Wow.
And for my PhD, I had to do a written proposal for a grant proposal, and it was on old world blue stems.
Oh.
And so that's kind of how I got started.
Okay.
My interest in invasive species.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
So,
That's exciting. So you've done a lot of work with it before you became the program director. So let's talk a little bit about this poster that you guys have out. Oklahoma's Dirty Dozen. I love this. It's good marketing right there.
Right? We can't count. There's 13. That's the baker's dozen, but it's the dirty dozen.
The unwanted invasive plants, and a lot of them look very familiar.
They will look very familiar, and some people will have a little bit of, they may think, oh man, that shouldn't be a problem, but we have to kind of think of that long term, right? So one Burmese python in the Everglades didn't destroy the Everglades, but now the Everglades are overrun by them.
Right, right.
And so that's why these invasive plants that are on this poster, the Dirty Dozen, are ones we aren't going to ever get rid of. But if we have an area that doesn't have them, there are things we can do to prevent them from moving in.
Okay.
So yeah.
So there's so many questions to lead into
Exactly.
this. I mean, one, how did you come up with this Dirty Dozen? Because I know anybody would look at this and be like, oh, well, you didn't put that on there, or why is that on there?
So the Oklahoma's Dirty Dozen was developed by the Oklahoma Invasive Plant Council.
Okay.
So it was a council that was founded in the mid 2000s, 2005
And you were
or so.
president of it for a while, were you?
Yeah, I was one of the founding members, but then became the president, and I'm now the president again.
Oh, back
And
in.
so, but we worked heavily the Oklahoma Invasive Plant Council is made up of members that represent all branches of dealing with plants, from the horticulture industry to Farm Bureau to the Nature Conservancy to the Biological Survey to the Wheat Growers Association, and their representation on it. And so we really went through.
I would imagine cattle too, maybe?
Cattle
even?
too,
'Cause
Farm Bureau,
some of these
really,
are forage type,
forage and erosion control. And so it took a lot of time to get this hashed down.
Getting that many people to agree on
It was really hard, but we got it. And these are ones that we'll never eradicate them, but we can hopefully prevent their, the movement into and the invasion into some of our habitats that haven't become invaded yet.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. And some of them are, we are a gardening show,
Correct.
and some of them are gardening type landscape plants, if you will.
I've had a few in my yard.
Yeah. And that's something that we always say, right plant, right place, but you got to be aware of your circumstances that you're around.
Exactly.
We still to this day are planting Eastern Red Cedars, and they have a viable use, I would say, in a landscape.
Right.
But when it's out not being managed on a pasture, then it becomes a problem.
Right, exactly. So I had one of the best examples of Eastern Red Cedar uses was on Tinker Air Force Base.
Oh.
And they have a nature trail, a hiking trail, where the goal is for the troops to be able to go out in nature, not see any of the military activities, so they can kind of get away from it.
Yeah.
Right? A peaceful place. And that requires blocking some views without fences.
Right.
And so the biologist there, who I've worked with a bit, said Eastern Red Cedars are go-to because it's the one that can block it for us. And so, they just work to maybe not help the people who have allergies. They kind of try to make sure there's no female plants that produce the seeds. But of course, the males produce the pollen.
Is it John that you work with there?
John Krupovich.
Yes,
Great guy.
Yes, we just went down. Actually, I'll give a little teaser though for our season that's starting soon. We went down there in December and are going to kind of do a couple of segments with him, I think, actually. So, I know that area that you were talking about. He showed us exactly those cedar trees and stuff that they planted to block the view.
Right, just block the view of the tarmac and the buildings, etc. Yeah. Just so the military personnel can get away from it.
Right. It's a great evergreen hedge to kind of cover the views, and so But so another one is the Chinese privet, I would say, that is often seen. It tends to revert back to its wild look, when it spreads. We were down near the Oklahoma City Zoo. And I didn't even recognize it, actually. I was with Mark Bays. And I was like, what is this? Because had berry, I can't remember, it was blooming or something that just really caught my eye. And I was like, what is all of this? And he was like, that's privet. That's not a good one. And so, but it was thick.
So these are plants that we may have, some of them are plants that we have found places for and uses for. But the problem is that because as an invasive, they have an ability to disperse and produce self-reproducing populations without any human impact.
Yeah, this was at the park away from the zoo, not the main zoo proper. So
it's like honeysuckle, Japanese honeysuckle.
Yeah.
You can go into some areas that have just been totally taken over by the honeysuckle. So it's reducing some of that habitat for native species, but then also there's a cost involved.
I was going to say, so what defines, I mean, what is it that you're looking for? Is it the impact on other plants? Is it the economic impact that it might cause? I mean, what is it, a combination that you're looking at, obviously?
It's really a combination.
Yeah.
So, the first invasive plants were really defined by agriculture as the noxious weeds, right? So those are the weeds that are in the crops that we may have, if they're listed as a noxious weed, they may have to be legally controlled, right? And then we have just plants that have been introduced into an area because we thought they were pretty, and they spread from there, and then they spread further and further, and the whole key for an invasive is what is the impact it has. So for many people, it would be harm to human health, right? That's why everybody knows about red imported fire ants and Africanized honeybees, harm to human health, right? The other would be economics. It costs us money. Agricultural weeds, huge problem, right? So expensive. That's why we have so many herbicides that we have to use. And then one of the other ones that some of us that are a little bit more idealistic would just say they have harm to native biodiversity, right? Harm to the environment.
Which then harms wildlife.
Could harm wildlife.
Potentially, yeah.
I in class the other day I was talking about purple loosestrife, and purple loosestrife is a beautiful plant that's ornamental.
One I like.
See, when you have that face, I just go, no.
I know. But I've heard that
it
and you
block
see pictures,
navigable waterways.
Yeah. You see pictures where you're just like, it makes you cringe to know that it's doing that. Yeah.
Exactly. And so we are primarily concerned for health, economy, and then native impacts, right? And then we could go to eastern red cedar and say a native invader, right? So we've planted it, it's spread, we've altered our fire,
right?
Because it's not fire tolerant.
Dwayne Elmore would say it's a land management thing,
right? And I would counter that and say it's definitely land management, but it's also the fact that we planted so many that the seed sources are everywhere now, right?
Yeah.
And so for us,
we've helped it.
For us in Oklahoma, it has affected our fire, our fire kind of, I guess, the fire impact. So if you have a wildfire with eastern red cedar, that can be some massive volatiles that are there, and that can really increase the spread.
They're full of oils and stuff, right?
Right.
But that's kind of one of the only ways to control it when they're young, right? Is to
burn?
Yeah.
A prescribed burn.
No, that's what I mean. Yeah, absolutely. Prescribed burn, yeah.
Prescribed burn or clip them yourself.
Yeah.
That's what my grandfather would, again, back to the family.
Because otherwise you're bulldozing, which can be
devastating to the soils.
Yeah.
So my grandfather was in Woods County, northwest Oklahoma, and he would walk the pastures and clip. He just had little clippers, and he would cut them off whenever he saw them.
Right.
So yeah.
And
persistence.
Musk thistle. When you're speaking of walking pastures, clipping things, that's what that brings to mind.
That one's the one that is actually a noxious weed in Oklahoma, and so it's
another
landowners.
Flower, but yes,
a purple flower that many people confuse and think, wait, is that the good one?
Right. No, there's a lot of
thistles. There's so many native thistles.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, musk thistle, one of our noxious weeds that landowners really are supposed to control.
And when they go to seed, they're just thick.
Right. So it's not I always like to say it's not one and done.
Right.
So you can't just do one treatment and expect them to go away because these, the seeds that are produced are just,
Isn't there some legal ramifications, like for landowners, that they have to cut those out?
If they're reported.
Okay.
So since it's on the noxious weed list, they are legally obligated to control it.
Okay.
They can get reported, and ODAF, Oklahoma Department of Ag, Food, and Forestry, can actually, if they get the report, they can send an inspector out.
Okay.
But many times it's just lack of knowledge, but other times it may actually be because management was prevented because of weather or something.
Right.
So, they meant to mow, they meant to spray, but it was too wet.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I often hear about that more with musk thistle than red cedar, though. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of potential. The ODAF would be going all over the
But
state.
red cedar is not a noxious weed.
Oh, okay.
And for erosion control,
Okay.
right? And just as a side note, in the state of Kansas, those two plants are on their noxious weed list.
Oh, really?
Right.
Okay.
And they have to control them in Kansas.
Yeah, and plants know where the state lines are, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They know where they can be and where they can't,
Exactly.
I'm sure. Well, yeah, I mean, and we all know Johnson grass. I mean, anybody in a homeowner situation knows Johnson grass probably. So it's, yeah, you're going to have some good job security, right?
Well, yeah. And the intent for this really is to just educate.
Yeah.
And kind of get people to be aware of how these plants, we had good intentions, and all good intentions can come with ultimate consequences, right? We had good intentions, and these are plants that we'll never get rid of.
Right.
But we also have another list that we're actually working on. It's the watch list.
Yes, and we have that too, that we'll probably post to Facebook later, I imagine, but I have a copy of that, I think I printed.
It's a long list.
Yeah, it is.
And we're trying.
And you can kind of, it's broken up. If you go to the, let me get the title right, the Oklahoma Invasives Council website.
So it's actually the okinvasives.org.
Okay.
Don't worry about the OK. OK is an abbreviation for Oklahoma, not OK as in they're OK.
Okay.
Right. okinvasives.org is the website that provides us, really it's our focus website for information about Oklahoma invasives. You can get to the council's website, but the council's website is mainly just information for our members and our board.
Okay. And they have a lot of great information. And so on there is a watch list. I printed, it's about 2 pages. And what's neat is it's broken down kind of by your region too. So you can kind of focus on what you might be seeing in your area. Somebody just asked me the other day about kudzu, actually. I was down in Duncan, and somebody asked me about
There's some
kudzu.
kudzu in Duncan.
I knew it was in Oklahoma because I think I've heard of it in Canadian County out by El Reno.
Right. There's probably about 70 acres of kudzu in the state so far.
Do we know how far north it's come, or?
There's some in Claremore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
Wow.
it's in the northern part,
Okay.
and it goes up into Nebraska also.
Does it really?
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of more. It's
Cold
not
tolerant.
dying. Yeah.
Oh yes.
No. Oh.
That's what the mistake we make.
Oh, okay.
The mistake we make is that it'll freeze out.
Right.
But one thing that invasives do is that they have the ability to reproduce quickly, evolve quickly, and they can have that adaptation.
And so they're doing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Just
Okay.
like our bacteria, our health bacteria,
Oh, yeah.
that
Changes
they
quickly.
change and they basically become immune to antibiotics. Some of our invasive plants or animals, they're changing too.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of grew up and I got into horticulture through water plants, and I know, like, you mentioned the floating heart, the yellow floating heart. Yeah.
uh-huh.
I mean, that was one that you bought back in the day, and then I know the water lettuce and the
hyacinth.
water hyacinth, Loosestrife, like
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of those are. I think you can still have the water lettuce and hyacinth in our state, but you cannot take it to Texas. And
No. Right.
there's some
I'd have to look
legality
at-
there.
yeah.
I don't know exactly what it is, but I think you can still buy them here.
So I would have to defer to my aquatic nuisance species list,
Okay.
and I don't have that with me. But if it's on the aquatic nuisance species list in the state of Oklahoma, and that's a list that's within the Aquatic Nuisance Species Management Plan that Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation manages.
Okay.
If it's in that list, it's illegal to buy, sell, trade, or transport.
Okay.
So I don't know the
Yeah,
answer
so
to
we'll
that 'cause
check
I
that.
can't remember all of them.
Well, I haven't bought any, so we'll check that list before we do. But I mean, that's how things have changed over the years, you know.
Exactly.
And Bradford Pear. Should we talk, or Callery Pear? Should we talk about
Yeah.
Callery Pears?
Well, Callery Pear, yeah. Callery Pear, Bradford Pear.
Yeah.
It
It supposedly was sterile, right?
that was a wonderful marketing plan, right? Oh, it's sterile. It won't reproduce. It doesn't produce seed. It's not going to
And
spread
I've heard that about
anywhere.
Loosestrife too.
Oh, yes. We have varieties that will not reproduce, and it doesn't produce seed. Anyway, so we planted a lot of Bradford Pear for ornamentals, and it was promoted as though it was going to be, it grows fast, it establishes quickly, it's kind of pretty, and then we find out that if it grows fast, it establishes quickly. There are some characteristics that when you hear those phrases, you may want to be cautious.
Okay. Well, that's what I was going to ask you earlier. Are there identifying marks that we've found? Because a lot of those seem to be, including the salt cedar. I know it spreads through water, if I'm correct on that.
Yes.
And so a lot of these are water plants that we've mentioned. Obviously, there's some that aren't. But
Right.
Are there some that you're finding, okay, if it spreads through water, then that's something we need to be very cautious before we release it? Or
I don't even want to just say it spreads through water. It could be the wind distributes the seeds. So in my invasive species class, we'll go through a whole host of characteristics
that make it more
if you can check this many boxes, the risk of it becoming an invasive it's higher.
Okay.
And so we want to really be cautious when we say, oh, well, let's plant that. But the horticulture industry is an excellent example of an industry that has really worked hard to make sure that when they bring plants in that are beautiful ornamentals, they really do a rigorous assessment of them. Now, because they're so aware of the fact that horticulture plants can have the potential, right? Because if you have a gardener who, they're a new gardener,
right.
They want it to establish quickly, grow fast, but if it starts spreading out of control,
right.
What was the phrase you said? A plant?
A right plant, right place.
Right plant, right place. Yeah, right plant staying in its place, right? Yeah, that's what we want.
Absolutely. And so I think a lot of times, we'll feature a plant that it maybe does well here in Oklahoma and doesn't have any problems, but say it is invasive up in Colorado. I mean, there are plants that are invasive in other locations,
Right.
but they're not a problem here. Obviously, we need to check the watch list to see if it is on the watch list or not. But, I mean, is that possible that a plant can be a horticulture crop in one location but be a nuisance in another?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So just because it's bad in California doesn't mean it's a problem
here, right?
here
So that's why on our watch list, and keep in mind, it's a workable document. It's not static.
Right.
It's going to continue to be revised. We tried to take it, because at first, and this is kind of one of the problems associated with, trying to get all this information together, is that we made a list for all of Oklahoma.
Right.
Well, we know how diverse the
Yeah.
ecosystems are from the Panhandle down to McCurtain County. Right? How diverse that is. So we decided we would take it up, and we divided it up into the countries, the tourism countries, like carpet country, green country, red carpet country. Yeah. And so we put the list of the plants that could be problematic in those areas.
Okay.
So it may be problematic in the eastern part of the state, but definitely not in the Panhandle. Right.
Okay.
So absolutely.
Yeah. And so we see that diversity just within our state. So
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. As opposed to, most of the species that are on our Dirty Dozen list
Are
across the state.
Okay.
Right.
So, and that's why if you're looking at that and you're like, well, that plant isn't on there and definitely
Right.
should be. Well, it might just be in your location, then it's a problem.
It could
so,
be.
okay. Well, and this is education, and you're trying to educate everyone, all ages,
Exactly.
right?
And so that's why we have a coloring book. So the coloring book is so Blair Gorley, Laura Goodman, Dwayne Elmore, Nancy Seiler, the artist, we worked together to produce a coloring book that we have distributed, and we're happy to send it to anywhere.
Okay.
But it's on the screen now, and it's the coloring book. The cover shows the proper colors. The cover shows the colors of the plants, and then the inside it's kind of a complex coloring book.
So it's like an adult coloring
could
book.
be
That's all their age now, right?
Absolutely, right? And so, yeah, whenever you try to start coloring salt cedar or a Russian thistle, good luck.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be hard to stay in the line. And so, but there's information there, and we tried to help add knowledge for children, but then also for, their parents when they're working. There's crossword puzzles, there's word searches. So yeah.
Well, you're definitely evidence that as a child, children are paying attention to this, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's important to go ahead and let them know what that plant is.
Absolutely.
And I mean, that's.
Yeah. And our whole goal ultimately is, and we try to do this, and I think I need to get better at it, but our whole goal is to really find native alternates to these plants.
Okay.
Because some of these are beautiful plants, right? I can't deny
salt
that.
cedar,
right?
I mean, yeah.
Right, but there are some native plants that we could use that would be just better for our habitat and won't cause the problem, because you always have to think down the road what's going to happen.
Right. And there is a fact sheet out there.
We have a fact sheet
that kind of has replacement plants for
the Dirty Dozen.
Okay.
Our goal is to, we haven't got there yet, but we'll get there for the watch list.
Okay. Yeah, you've got a few more on the watch list.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Get comparisons for. But
sure.
I'm kind of looking over this watch list to see. So water hyacinth's on there. Elaeagnus pungens is on there, which is a popular ornamental that we
Didn't know
often
that.
see.
Good to know.
Field bindweed, which is not a popular one, but and I know farmers hate it because it gets clogged up in their combines.
Another story associated with my childhood, I drove the tractor.
Okay.
Right? And so my father said, if you see a plant of bindweed, you stop the tractor, you don't go over it, you pluck it from its roots, and you bring it up into the tractor with you, and you give it to me when you're done.
Wow.
Because he knew that if you ran a disc over it, you could just spread it. Yeah.
And
I forgot about that.
So were you actually able to dig up the bindweed?
It was not, don't even go there.
I was going to say, I don't ever think I could get the root on it.
I had knives.
Oh. Kids with knives driving tractors.
We were well supplied on the tractor.
That's awesome. So, and then bush honeysuckle is another popular one.
Right.
Yeah. So kudzu, ravina grass. Yeah, so go to this website, the Oklahoma
Invasives.org.
Thank you. And mimosa tree of heaven.
Tree of heaven.
Yes, that's
spreads,
yeah, and that's not necessarily a pretty tree.
Well,
Mimosa is still an ornamental that's used a lot with some of their different cultivars that they've come out with. But yeah, I know. I always liked mimosas to climb in when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah.
That reminds me of my
the
grandma.
slow branches.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we pretended we were in like little tree houses and stuff up there. So,
but
anyway,
those seeds, man,
they
can spread.
They spread. Well, this is. I want to take your class now after this.
It's a pretty fun class. I have 70 in there.
Wow,
this semester.
Do you?
Right.
Okay. Is
It's
it this
pretty fun.
semester? Okay.
Spring.
Right. Do you
I have an online class that I teach every other fall. Got that last fall.
Okay. Well, I might have to check into that.
Love to have you.
So this has just been awesome. A lot of information and a lot more that will be coming as things progress and change and our environment changes. You mentioned a little bit about prescribed burning and that sort of stuff. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that might be used to manage some of these things? Or?
So interestingly, fire isn't a control practice for all of our invasives, right? Like Ceresia actually, and Dwayne Elmore will be able to speak more to this, but some of our species can actually be promoted by
spread,
fire, right?
Yeah.
And so the seeds like it, whatever. But we really like to use integrated pest management. Okay. And so integrated pest management, you're using physical control, mechanical physical control, chemical control, and then cultural control.
Okay.
So can we get out there and, as I tell my nephew and my brother-in-law when they're saying, I got to get after the thistles. And I said, get them before they set seed.
Right.
Get them before they set seed. And so that's kind of that cultural practice where, get them now.
So is there somewhere a resource that people can go to? I have this plant. I don't know what the best control method is for it.
So Misha Manucheri is the weed scientist in the Plant and Soil Science Department. She deals with agronomic weeds, so agricultural pests. Dwayne Elmore, Laura Goodman, they're going to be great sources of for information about invasive plants in more native areas. Then in the turf grass, I'm thinking who would be in turf grass to go to.
Dennis Martin, probably.
That's what I thought. Dennis Martin. He was on the Oklahoma Invasive Plant Council board.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
Okay.
And so really, it kind of depends upon your situation. Where are you? What is the area that you're looking at that has the problematic species?
Okay.
And then we can help. You can always contact me, and I can send you to the right place.
Okay.
The county extension educators are a great source to go to.
I was about to say, yeah. So, if you don't know where to start, go to your county extension agent, and they
Absolutely.
can, if they may not be able to answer your question right there on the spot, but they definitely can then have access to all of these specialists up here on campus to get those identified. So, yeah.
For sure.
That's awesome. So, a wealth of information. This has been fun. Have you enjoyed this?
Yes, this was really fun.
I've enjoyed talking about.
This was my first podcast that I've done with you, so it's great. Yeah, I'm excited.
Glad we could initiate you here.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go home and look at my garden a little bit, I think.
I do.
Yeah.
Every year.
Yeah, it's
especially when I find little cedar trees growing.
Oh, yeah. Well, speaking of trees, one that we didn't talk about was the Siberian elm.
Siberian elm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, we have a lot of elm trees in Oklahoma.
Native.
Yeah.
We have the American elm.
So let's talk a little bit about the Siberian elm. We have a few more minutes, I think.
So Siberian elm was a plant that was, this is the one that can get really become emotional for people, because in the western part of the state, Siberian elm may be the only tree that used to be able to grow when they planted or developed their homesteads, right? So they had to plant so many trees, have a dwelling, etc. when they homesteaded. And Siberian elm was one of those species that it could handle it. It could handle those drought years and the dryness. But in the more eastern, the wetter portions of the area, those Siberian elms are producing, hundreds of thousands of trees if you have a grove of them, and they can they'll seed, establish quickly, and then grow up, and you can have just a massive influx of them.
Okay.
So that's one of those species that occurs across the state, but in some areas people would say that's the one that we like.
Yeah.
Right? We have some at our farm that they really don't have a place to spread because it's farm ground, it's cropland around it.
Right.
And as Dr. Minucherry would say, iron sometimes is the best control method, and that's tillage, right? But then with our no-till practices or low-till practices, that can kind of limit our abilities on that mechanical. So yeah.
A lot of elms, and we're seeing that with some lacebark elms and things like that. They reseed a lot of times, Siberian elm's doing the same thing. But.
Siberian elm, and then the salt cedar also. Siberian elm and salt cedar produce massive quantities of seed. Salt cedar seeds can actually, if they embed in, so say there's a flooding event and a branch gets broken, or they have seeds that go downstream, they can germinate within 24 hours in wet soil.
Really? Wow.
Pretty powerful. And these are the ones that if you cut at the base, they can stump sprout.
Oh, yeah.
Eastern red cedar is one where,
We have one tree, and guess what tree it is out at our place? It's a Siberian elm.
Siberian elm.
Yeah, and there's little seedlings that come up, and they're only in my flower bed because we're surrounded. Right. And we have area we mow, we have farmland and that sort of stuff, but it's like they come up where I have tilled my garden. Right. And so that's where they tend
like
to.
That.
Yeah.
Take
that disturbed soil, that good soil where I'm taking care of my plants and so.
But those
there's one I cut regularly.
Trees, right. But some of those, if they're young enough, you can just cut them or pull them.
Right.
But so Eastern red
cedar. You give them more than a year though. There's no pulling them.
No, I try hard. Water a bit.
There's a rabbit holding on to it at the other end, I feel like, under.
So Eastern red cedar is one of those that's unique in the sense that you just have to get all the green. So if a fire comes through and scorches even the top, even if it's brown, right, it'll die because it's not fire tolerant. So if you're cutting an eastern red cedar tree, you always want to make sure you cut below that, like at ground level. You want to get that bottom branch,
right?
And then
they won't root sprout.
They don't root sprout.
And that's the concern about the Callery pear is that they do sprout.
They do, yes.
So I mean, you go through and clear that or whatever, they're going to keep coming back.
Correct.
It's like a gray hair. You pull one, you get two in return.
And they produce so many seeds. So we tend to sometimes forget about the seed bank. So we've got those above ground plants, but they've produced all the seeds, and many of those invasive plants produce seeds that are long lived. So they'll live in the soil. Sericea seeds can live for over 20 years.
Okay.
Right?
And those are the ones that fire actually
it can
help germinate them.
So yeah. And so Callery pear, it's the same.
Okay.
Siberian elm, same.
Okay. All right.
So, yeah.
Well, and so often you do see the Callery pear thicket next to a home situation, and you go through that neighborhood and you find the one Bradford pear in every front yard or whatever. And so
just
next
go to
door.
Sanger and Western. Right? So I still remember driving in when I first started at OSU, driving in on Western, and if you look at that southeastern corner there at Sanger and Western, it used to be grassland with a little, a tree riparian area.
Yeah.
And now it's a forest of Callery
Well,
pear.
and when you talk about if the landowner, I mean, that's an expense to have to go through and bulldoze that and mitigate that situation versus what it would have been just to manage it originally by mowing it.
And so that's one of the things we like to say is that get it early. So if you can, one, prevention, right? So that's why when you're, we don't even think about these things. We go hiking, we move firewood, we drive through an area, and we don't think about the fact that our clothing, our dogs, right? They go running through some area
that has seeds on them.
Might have seeds on them, and then you bring them back, and they can spread those seeds. Just unknowing. You don't even think about it.
Yeah.
And so just to be aware that, one, we may be moving those plants, but two, if you find one, get it now. Get it when it's younger. Like you said, hard to pull that Siberian elm after the second year.
and that's why we wanted to do this segment with you. And I appreciate you coming on and doing the podcast because I think a lot of people, we're not necessarily aware of the bigger picture. Right. Not that we aren't, don't care. It's just that we're not aware of it. And so that's what this is about is education, being aware of the dirty dozen, and then also the watch list so that as we are planting, to recognize if it is getting out of control, that we need to take it and control it right away.
Right.
So some of those are plants that have a horticulture purpose and are going to continue to have a horticulture purpose in our state. And some of those are ones that we probably are not even familiar with. But
Absolutely. And that's why it's just, I like to tie the two together, the invasive species and the environmental science program together, because I have students in the environmental science program that will go on to work in the invasive species field. And so just having environmental science in the Ferguson College of Agriculture is pretty awesome because we can really hit some of these points.
That's exciting. I'm so excited for what all is going to happen in that program and see what comes out of it and continue to work with you guys. We're going to have you on the show sometime. I don't think we've actually had you on our
if I did, it was
TV
a while
show.
ago.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
So I know you're a busy person.
Oh yeah.
Maybe we can get out to your farm sometime and go look through some of the plants, and we like to do that with botanists and plant specialists.
Oh, that would be fun.
Look at some of the native plants and things like that.
So yeah,
I've had Laura Goodman on. We're going to have Dwayne on next week. So yeah.
So we could go to the western part of the state, Woods County.
Definitely. That would be exciting. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anybody that's interested in the environmental science program, check out your website. Right now it's es.okstate.edu.
Correct.
For any of this information that we've talked about with invasive plants, it is, say that again?
It's okinvasives.org.
Okay. All right. Excellent.
Great.
Thank you, Dr. Hickman.
Thank you so much, Casey. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
To find out more information about show topics, as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure and visit our website, oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. And we always have great information, answers to questions, photos, and gardening discussions on your favorite social media as well. Join in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows, as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater jewel. We would like to thank our generous underwriter, the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is also provided by Pond Pro Shop, Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, the Oklahoma Horticultural Society, and the Tulsa Garden Club.